meeting. The House comes to questions for oral answer. Question number 1 in the name of Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister and asks, does he stand by his statement with regard to the deployment of troops to the war zone in Iraq that, quote, I don't think that's a matter for a parliamentary vote, end quotes?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, yes.
A supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given that Parliament has to approve paying the Defence Force, has to approve buying the tools it needs, and has to declare war, does he not accept it is right that Parliament should approve sending our troops to war?
Speaker,
right Honourable Prime Minister.
There is no convention that there will be a parliamentary vote, and history shows that in many cases there haven't been. The Labor government, as I pointed out a few moments ago, when they sent the SAS in a combat role, did not actually take that to a parliamentary vote.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Isn't the reality this? The only reason he won't put the decision to deploy troops to Iraq to a vote is because he cannot get the approval of this Parliament?
Speaker,
right Honourable Prime Minister.
No. Every 3 years this country has a vote on the leadership shown by political parties. I'm quite happy to put my leadership when it comes to the safety and security of New Zealanders to a very widespread vote in 2017.
Supplementary.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Given his government's failure to secure a status of forces agreement with the Iraqi government, is he absolutely sure that a diplomatic passport gives the right for our troops to be armed and defend themselves if necessary?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, that position is yet to be decided, but I am totally confident that our forces, when they go for their training mission, will have all of the legal requirements to carry out their functions.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Does he think that waiving a diplomatic passport will get our troops out of trouble following a shooting in Iraq, especially when the Iraqi government has specifically refused to sign an agreement giving our troops rights over there? Is that the kind of risk he's prepared to take with our troops?
Right Honourable
Speaker,
Prime Minister.
The member's actually quite wrong in parts of his question, but I can say that the matter was raised with the Iraqi Foreign Minister, who gave us every confidence that the position would be resolved to ensure our forces have the absolute protection required.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Is being part of the club worth sending our soldiers to war without the authorisation of Parliament, without a plan, without legal authority and without any guarantee of their safety?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, there are 62 members who have decided that they, in some part, will play a role in standing up to evil and standing up to people that threaten New Zealanders and our values and principles. I suspect, actually, it's a very similar number when Helen Clark decided to send the engineers to Iraq. I suspect it's the same situation when Helen Clark decided to send the SAS in a combat role, Mr Speaker, as and so often is the case. What we see from Labor is they do one thing in government and say one thing in opposition.
Order. Supplementary question, Andrew Little.
Speaker, why doesn't he support Labor's position to actually give the Iraqi government the help that it's asked for, humanitarian support and reconstruction expertise?
Well,
Right
Speaker,
Honourable Prime Minister.
a number of things. Firstly, we already are giving humanitarian support, 14.5 million. Secondly, I'd make the point that in our meeting with the Iraqi Foreign Minister, the number one thing that he asked for was support and security training, so training of the Iraqi security forces, Mr Speaker. So, Mr Speaker, I will make this one final point. It is a slightly warped sense of risk when the Leader of the Opposition thinks that the role New Zealand should play should be conducting airstrikes when we don't have that capability, as he's publicly said, and secondly, reconstruction of roads, schools and hospitals outside the wire in an environment where they'd be subject to IED attacks, attacks by ISIL, and well, you can't do them behind the wire, sunshine.
Order. 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 Question number 2, Dr. Russell Norman.